I have started the recording.
Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Great. I'm just looking at this. Hello, Ego Authority Sister. Okay, welcome, everybody. Okay, let's get started. So Ruth is going to start us off. Ruth, are you good to go on the screen?
I am ready.
Okay, sweet.
Well, good day, everyone, and thank you all for joining us from all corners of the globe. Looks like we have folks from Taiwan here and lots of different places. So welcome to the third in our series of Human Design Newcomer webinars. And today we are going to be talking about the 9 centers. I'm Ruth Brennan, and I'm a professional analyst and certified BG5 and career consultant as well. And I'm here today with Lynette Hagins, who is the International Human Design School administrator, a professional analyst, and a teacher in the Professional Training Academy. Lynette was my teacher, and I always enjoy an opportunity to get to be with her again. Thank you, Lynette.
Thank you
for being here with me.
Super fun. And Lynda couldn't be here. I forgot to mention that. She wasn't able to make it today, so you guys are stuck with us.
And we're looking forward to it. So let's see. Centers today. The previous 2 webinars were on type and strategy and authority. And I believe those recordings can be made available. Lynette, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep. If you want the recording and you don't have it, just send me an email, office@ihdschool.com, and I can send it to you.
Great. And next month, we will be talking about profiles. And I believe we've added a 5th webinar, which will be in June. The date to be determined. That will be a Q&A that will allow you to ask questions about the series of webinars. So look for that date in your email. Lynette, I believe we should have that date by the time we send the follow-up email, correct?
Okay. I don't know.
Let's see if we can get the date. So last month, one of the attendees asked us, what can human design do for you? And for those of you who are new to human design, what a great question. I can tell you what human design has done for me. And what is human design? It is a synthesis of ancient wisdoms and modern science. It is called the science of differentiation. And it allows us to look at a map, a genetic blueprint, if you would, of our nature and nurture, or how we're designed to operate to our highest potential right now. And I can tell you for me that human design has changed my life. When I found human design, I was way off on another path that didn't really resemble anything like the person I really was. And human design gave me the tools to start to reconnect with my nature, with my innate gifts and talents. And I think most profoundly for me, it allowed me to see what I'm not and gave me permission not to be those things. And one of the great things about the centers and what we'll be discussing today is it gives us a snapshot of how we can work on our shadows, or how we can work with the conditioning that we've had over our lifetime that can cause us to make decisions perhaps not in our best interest, and at least for me, caused a lot of stress in my life. So I'm so excited that we get to talk about centers today. Lynette, do you have anything to add?
No, I'm just loving what you were saying, and just like Ruth, meeting this information dramatically altered the course of my life, and I'm just continually grateful that I don't have to figure anything out. That's my big thing. And people kind of laugh at me, but I pretty much operate in a general state of confusion most of the time, and I'm totally okay with that. And I've gotten to the place where I just, I worry about it less and less and less. So I always kind of feel like I need at least a couple more lifetimes to get really good at this, but it's finally to the place, where the passenger's more surrendered and it feels really good. So it's just, it's amazing if you experiment with it yourself.
Thank you, Lynette.
Thanks.
And at its core, human design can really help you understand how you can make correct decisions in your life for yourself as yourself. And boy, is that a relief. So the centers in your human design. There are 9 centers. In the synthesis of human design, the centers are a synthesis, hard to say that word sometimes, of the chakra system. And if you're familiar with the chakra system, 7 chakras, and they went straight up in a hierarchical line. And as humanity has evolved, the human design body graph shows 9 energetic hubs. And if this were 3D, it'd look more like this. And so humanity has evolved into a more cooperative being rather than a hierarchical being in society. So wonderful to see how these all work together in your design. So there are different kinds of centers. There are 2 pressure centers, the head and the root, 4 motors or energy centers, the solar plex, the sacral, the root, and the heart, 3 awareness centers, the spleen, the ajna, and the solar plexus, 1 manifestation center, the throat, and 1 identity center, the G.
Okay, guys. So this is a graphical representation of centers, and we're just going to keep it really, really simple for you. You can see on the left-hand side, we've got open centers. In the middle, we have an undefined center, and there's 1 gate in there. What makes a center turn on and get lit up and full of color is a life force channel. And a defined channel, which is the gate at either end, turns on the center. Okay, so both centers here. So that's what definition is. Now, when we talk about definition versus openness, definition, the thing to remember is definition is turned on, okay? It's generally reliable and consistent. It's always operating. And you got to be careful here, because that doesn't mean that it's correct. You can't just go, well, I have a defined head and this is my thing and I'm thinking this, so it's correct. I mean, the authority is never the mind in human design. So if you're not following your strategy and authority, we talked about that in the other webinars, and you're not navigating your vehicle correctly, you're going to have problems in your definition too. In fact, that's precisely where you're going to have the problems, along with your openness. So if a center is open, then we say it's not turned on unless something is turning it on. Okay, and we'll talk about it a little bit. And it's going to be inconsistent in the way that it operates. Inconsistent. We're going to talk about this some more. So that means it's going to be subject to conditioning, which is, from other people, right, in aura, and also planetary aspects. So centers are incredible when it comes to understanding your design. So one of the things to really begin, I think Ruth kind of touched on this, to understand who you are and who you are not as far as navigating correctly, is to understand the way that your centers, both defined and open, operate for you. It's profound. So since they're the integrative hub in the body graph, when you start to understand this, it gives you a really deep understanding about how you're navigating and, using your strategy and authority if you're being correct. Let me just go on to the next one here. Okay, cool. So the not self. The The not self is living out a life based on what we are pulled towards, attracted to, and conditioned by, rather than living out what our imprint is. Okay, and we're most deeply conditioned by our openness. We're genetically designed to want that thing that we don't have. Oh, that's really exciting. Oh, I really, that's a great idea. I'm going to go after that, And it's not to say that conditioning is bad. The spice of life, it's not bad. But when you work within your own correctness and you're using, your own strategy and your own inner authority to navigate your body, you get what's correct for you. Okay? So I'm trying to think of another way to say this. Conditioning in and of itself is not bad. That's just the thing to remember. But it's what we're wanting and seeking after that can really mess us up. So we can never feel complete. We want to fill up that open center, right? We can never feel whole, and you have to really, we're going to look at this in a simple way, and it really depends on how your individual chart is structured, but it's just like it says here, you can never feel good about and love yourself because you really think that you need to fill up that open center that you don't have. And you don't respect yourself and you don't love yourself. And when we get to the true self aspect of it, when we're operating correctly, our openness is really where we go to school and what we're here to learn about and what we're here to be really wise about, And if you use your mind to just observe the conditioning, just watch it, use that passenger consciousness and observe what's happening, right? Drop the story. Then we get this thing called awareness, and we can be like, wow, I'm really feeling like I need to go prove myself right now. Maybe you've got an open ego, but I'm just going to watch that and see, are you a generator? Are you responding to do that thing? Are you responding to give your energy to it? Because if we look at human design in a bigger way, we are cells within the whole, if you want to kind of look at it that way. And we have a very specific imprint to live out. And one of the things to really understand about the open centers and how they pull us away is that we've got chemistry for all of it, you guys. That's why it's such a pull for us, because we've got chemistry for all of it. But if you keep going back to your strategy and authority, it will align you. And that's why it's important to understand you can't do this mentally. Strategy and authority is not just a slogan. It's really, it's the way to navigate your vehicle, your spaceship, and get you aligned. Before I go on to the next slide, Ruth, do you want to add anything?
Well, I like to say it's important that we live out our piece of the cosmic puzzle, that we become the highest potential of our innate gifts and skills and talents that we possibly can, and then learn to share that with others. And it's so much better to be who you are than it is to be a bad copy of someone else.
Or as Rob would say, furniture or extras, and not living out your own. You see, what happens with human design is you get your own mythology. Mm-hmm. You get your character, you get your role, and it just happens over time as you experiment.
Yeah.
This is a really good slide. I like this slide, Ruth. So look, the open centers, the way that the undefined centers can operate, and this is really important for you guys to understand. Openness not only takes in the conditioning, it amplifies it, makes it bigger. Think about kind of like maybe like a guitar amplifier. What can happen when something gets amplified? It gets really loud, right? It can get distorted. So what happens is, in our openness, we can overreact, we can misunderstand, because that energy it's actually, in the beginning, especially as you're experimenting with your design, the openness is going to be louder than the definition. So it's really easy. The mind is always going to be the spokesperson for the open centers. It's just the way that it works. So it's easy for the mind to override what's correct for you. what your strategy and authority is. And you know, this isn't like the Holy Bible. This is for you guys to experiment with and step into this on your own and see, wow, I'm really feeling distorted right now. I'm really feeling really nervous and upset. Is that me in my open solar plexus, or is that the other person? Or is that a transit? So it just helps to understand this. And over time, as you observe it and you go through it, you can be really wise about it. Yeah. So let's go on and take a look at these centers. I mean, Ruth is going to start us off with the head center.
The head center at the very top of your chart. Now, if you have a human design chart, it might be helpful to have it out and be looking at it as we go through these slides. And if you don't have a chart, you can go to IHDS, CHOOL, school.com and order a free chart. And there will also be a link to get a free chart in the follow-up email. So starting at the very top, we have our first pressure center, the head center. And you'll see it colored in red here in the body graph, colored in yellow in the body graph. That is mental pressure. It's inspiration, mental pressure, questions, doubts, confusion, ideas. The head is where we take in consciousness and, whoops.
Sorry.
Was I done with that?
No, that was me. I was trying to look at look at the chat, but I can't do it. Yeah. Sorry, sweets.
Yeah. So the head center is where we get our ideas. And the biological correlation to this energetic hub is the pineal gland. So if you have a defined head center in your chart, the way that your head works is defined, fixed, reliable, consistent, and that will depend on the specific activations and your definition to the head. So if this center is open in your chart, the question to ask yourself is, are you preoccupied with finding answers to questions that don't matter? And I remember the first time I heard this, because I have an open head, and I thought, everything I think about matters. And it was difficult for me to wrap my head around this question, or was I thinking about things that were leading me off the path? Was I making decisions about inspiration or ideas that I had that weren't correct for me? And I find that, yeah, I think about things that don't matter. I spend a lot of time up in my head rifling through things that really don't matter in my life today. I do have better awareness now when that's happening, and I can just smile and say, ah, there it goes again. So if you have an open head center, if that triangle at the very top of your chart is white and not colored in, the question to ask yourself, are you occupied with questions, concerns, worries, and things that really don't matter to you? Are you trying to answer everyone else's questions? And do you lose focus easily? Are you easily distracted by thoughts that have nothing to do with the present moment, what you're doing right now? Now, I have the open head center, so I truly relate to this. Lynette has a defined head center, and the way she thinks and her inspiration ideas are defined, reliable, fixed, and consistent. And what is your experience of the defined head center, Lynette?
Well, I'm not allowed to curse in these webinars, but if I could, it never shuts up. I mean, my head and ajna are defined, and yeah, my mind never stops. And for me, I was just discussing this with Ruth earlier, really, you know, I've got a couple channels in my head center defined twice, and that's neither here nor there at this point. But for me, really, really getting hit with the fact when I met human design years ago that I am not my mind, and my mind's not here to make my decisions, was a huge slam for me. I was like, what? What do you mean? I'm totally my, you know what I mean? So For me, it's just turned on, it's consistent, and I really notice for me that it's, I've got to get really good at just dropping the story, just like anybody with an open head would do. Yeah, so it never shuts up. Um, Instead of amplifying, it's just going, going, going on. It doesn't really quiet down. So yeah, it is a very, and not only that too, it's important to understand that it's like, you know, just because it's consistent, it's not my authority, right, guys? And I'm not here to put that on other people. Just because I think a certain way, it doesn't mean that I can put that pressure into other people. And, you know, they're going to be people that have open heads are going to be amplifying my defined head center, right? So there's always that interplay involved. Yeah. But it's beautiful when you can just recognize it.
And one is not better than the other. Having a defined head isn't better than an open head center. And having an open head center isn't better than having a defined head center. And that is so important to realize. They just function differently and have different functions in the overall strategy and expression of your design.
Yeah. Your design is perfect. Whatever it is, this is not about adding anything to you guys. It's just about the deconditioning of what you're not. Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you.
All right. So with the head center, the ajna makes up what we call the mind. And we talked a little bit about the mind with the head center. It's hard to separate the two. Lynette, would you take us through the ajna?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Reasons, concepts, theories, and answers. Okay, so important to note if you've got a defined ajna center. So if the head center is about pressure to think what you think, the ajna center is more like how you think, how you conceptualize. Do you have a defined ajna? Do you have a consistent, reliable way of conceptualizing? Or is that part of you open and subject to conditioning and, you know, a more fluid conceptualization, an open mind, right? The biological correspondence here, the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus. So self-reflected awareness, this is really, you know, this is what makes the mind so incredible. You know, human design is not about demonizing the mind, you guys, and I know it can sound like that, especially if you listen to me for 10 minutes, but our minds have a job to do. They're just not here to move the vehicle, but they're here to show up as an outer authority, right? So the question to ask yourself, if you have an open ajna, are you still trying to convince other people and yourself that you're certain? Oh, I know. No, I just know the answer. I know. And if you have an open head, I know. And I'm going to tell you all about it because it matters. And I'm certain that it matters because, you know, the open centers will work together. It's funny, you know, this is the spokesperson for the not self. And you can, as you watch this, you can say, oh, wow, if you have an open ajna, look at that. Look at that. I want to convince everybody that I'm certain. You know, and look, I can do this too, just because, you know, I have a defined ajna. I caught myself yesterday and I was speaking and I was going to make a case for myself because I was talking to a friend about somebody else and I started to like talk and make a case for myself and I stopped mid-sentence and she was like, what are you doing? I'm like, my mind was about to go off on a tangent, on a not self tangent. So open or defined, just watch this, just observe it, you know, and like Ruth said before, one is not better than the other. Reasons, concepts, theories, and answers. Consistent or inconsistent. How do you operate? Are you taking it in or are you putting it out with the definition? Let's see what the next one is. Okay, pretending you're mentally certain. I think that's pretty clear. Oh, I know. No, I know that I'm certain. Whenever, even with the defined ajna, whenever I'm catching myself mentally saying that I'm certain about something, unless it's my own authority, my will, which is my authority, I know I'm in trouble. I know I'm in trouble. And, you know, the mind always wants to go back there. So it gets really good. You got to have a sense of humor. Being conceptually defensive, afraid of looking not smart, like you're stupid, you know, wanting to convince people that you're really smart and you know, you're just certain, you know. Am I holding on to concepts that don't serve me? Do I really need to believe that? Do I believe that? Am I too rigid in my belief? you know? Sometimes for me, with a defined ajna and a defined head center, I can get to the point where I don't care about anything. And that's not always correct either. You know, I've really got to navigate correctly, because I don't, you know, I was telling Ruth, I don't like to go up there, you know? And sometimes it's necessary. So it's really just understanding and observing the way that you work. What's your experience, Ruth, with the Open Ajna Center? Do you want to share?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I have an open head in ajna, what is called an open mind. And so, and I would like to share first that the beauty of the openness is if you have an open center, and with the ajna, we're here to become wise about many, many different ways to conceptualize and concretize the ideas and inspirations that we have. We're here to look at it from many different directions. We use that conditioning to become wise so that we can add that to our wisdom, our outer authority, that we're able to share with others in the world, not necessarily use it to run our lives, but to become part of our wisdom that we're able to share. And so I have learned to appreciate being able to see many different sides of the story and not be certain, to be open to all the different kinds of ideas and things that, you know, flood in and get amplified in my open mind.
I love your open mind. I love talking to you, because I'm like, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, well, and I love the juxtaposition of it when we
Yes.
communicate. Yeah.
One is not good and one is not bad.
Yeah.
They just operate differently, and together it's an amazing thing.
Thank you.
All right. So let's move to the root, to the bottom of the body graph. And the root is also a pressure center. It is physical pressure to engage with the world. It's pressure on the body, stress, adrenaline, worry, and potential depression. Very powerful center. It's the fuel for the body. And its biological correlation are the adrenal glands that supercharged super fuel that we can use to survive, to run out of a house that's on fire, etc. If it is defined in you, you have a fixed, defined, and reliable way that you deal with pressure. I have a defined route, and I have a speed. It's not super fast. It's not super slow. I have a speed that I can rely on. And I get really uncomfortable if somebody tries to rush me or if they slow me down. I have a defined, fixed, reliable way that I experience the physical pressure to be in the world. And if it's open, the question to ask yourself, are you still in a hurry to be free of the pressure from others? And although I can't imagine, I can only imagine what it feels like to have an open route. I have, friends that have an open route, and they tell me they always feel like they need to rush. They have to hurry. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's get it done, let's move. And that kind of pressure on an open center that doesn't have fixed, defined, reliable access to the adrenaline can put a lot of pressure on your adrenal glands. And a lot of people have blown out their adrenals, have adrenal problem because, in our society today, we're under a lot of pressure to hurry. It's very, very simple. If you have an open root center, you may ask yourself, am I always in a hurry to be free of the pressure? Am I in a hurry to get things done so I can be free of the pressure? And what is so amazing about this is the minute you get free of that pressure, another pressure arises for you to get in a hurry to resolve. Lynette, you have an open route. How is that experience for you?
Well, I'm completely convinced that my open route's trying to kill me. I mean, and for those of you that have an open route, I'm thinking you can really relate. If you don't have an open route, all I can say is think about when a human being takes on pressure in their body. So we're not talking about the mental pressure of the head. We're talking about physical pressure. When a human being takes on physical pressure in their body, what's the first thing that they want to do? They want to get rid of it, and they want to get rid of it fast. So we go faster. I've got injuries on my body from rushing. You can tell I talk kind of fast. I'm trying not to talk fast. I've really trained myself to drive really slow. I think living in Hawaii for a while helped me with that. But I mean, it's just something. And the thing is too with human design, just because you understand this doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're going to get super comfortable. Okay, I still feel my open root. I still feel the pressure of it. But now I stop myself and I say, wow, what's the hurry, Lynette? I'm really rushing around here. Slow down. Don't let the pressure run you. And I've had adrenal fatigue and chronic fatigue and Epstein-Barr and all that kind of junk all my life. And part of the healing for me physically was really recognizing that I was amplifying the root centers of all of my children. That kind of a thing, So open or defined, both are correct. But the amplification of the open root for me is, it's something that I'm constantly dealing with and feeling it. I can feel it in my body right now. Yeah, but just being aware of it, and just like Ruth said, it's such a dark joke because the mind says, well, my boss just gave me a deadline of 6 weeks to complete this project. I'm going to get it done in 6 days so I can be like, whoa, I don't feel pressured anymore. Yeah, something's going to show up. The pressure's going to come back. So it's all about navigating correctly. Yeah, thank you.
And with an open root, you're here to become very wise about when it is appropriate for you, through your strategy and authority, to rush, and when it's okay to slow down and give your body a break and relax. Those are the things you're here to become very wise about, because with an open root, it's more comfortable for you to go really fast or slow on down than perhaps some of us with the defined root. My experience is I have speed that I'm comfortable with. So thank you, Lynette.
Thank you.
Want to move on to the splenic center?
Yeah, let's do it. Here we go. All right, so we've got the spleen over here. And the spleen is our oldest awareness center, okay? It's about intuition, health, well-being, the immune system, survival. She's got listed here health, values, protection, the biological correspondence, the lymphatic, and the autoimmune systems. So the question to ask yourself here, oh guys, this is the one that kicked me hard when I first got my human design reading, because I have an open spleen. The question to ask yourself, if it's open, is, are you still holding on to relationships that are not good for you, or anything that is not healthy for you? All right. It can be a habit. It can be an activity. More than likely, it's a person. All right. Because if you've got an open spleen, something happens when people with open spleens get around people with defined spleens. We just feel better. We feel better in our body. Because if you have an open spleen, Ra always said, you're not going to feel good all the time. Just get over it. But if you get around somebody that has a defined spleen, and this happens to me whenever I witness this, it's like, wow, all my aches and pains go away. I just start to feel better. And not only that, you feel safe. You feel secure with that person, even if that person is not healthy for you. All right? So what happens is you don't want to let go of that person, and you hold on really tight because you're afraid you're going to die if you let go, or you won't be able to survive. And all the gates have fears in them, and all of these fears come up. And so what you're really here to see is you're here to be wise about that, about what's healthy for you. And you can also be wise about what's healthy for other people sometimes too. Not to hold on to things for dear life so you can feel safe. Because, you can feel really insecure. I remember hearing Ross say something like, if you have a child that's born with an open spleen and the parents have defined spleens, one of the worst punishments that you can do to this child is to send them to their room alone, away from the spleen, and they'll scream and cry, and it's really, it doesn't feel good. So it's a question. It's just something to observe, and then once you see it, you can say, wow, I can let this unhealthy relationship or this unhealthy activity or whatever it is, I can let this go based on my strategy and authority. Am I responding? Whatever it is this the right invitation for me? You've got to go back to that, but you can let it go and you can still be secure within yourself and survive. And it'll be scary, but that's okay. It's all good. So here again, holding on to what is not good for you. What's not healthy for you? Am I holding on to relationships, jobs, and places that are not good for me? Or, this is another part, do I lack flexibility? I really relate to this as well with an open spleen, being so rigid because I'm always afraid. No, I'm going to just stick to what I know, so I'm not going to be flexible. So again, strategy and authority, this can never be mental. You've got to use your strategy and authority to navigate. Now, I know Ruth has a defined spleen. Ruth, do you want to share your experience about your defined spleen?
Sure.
Thanks.
The spleen is an amazing thing. Having a defined spleen, I have this like internal watchdog for me. I have intuition in the moment by moment, about what's safe or not for me. And splenic awareness, as Lynette said, our most ancient awareness system, kept us safe and allowed us to survive and evolve into who we are today. Much like the mammals that we have today, splenic awareness kept the Neanderthals alive. And it's this intuitive knowing in the body. It's not a mental knowing. It's an in the body intuitive, moment by moment, is something is safe or not. And I experience it, I call it like a hit, just a knowing if it is not good or good for me. And to have it make sense, my splenic awareness informs my sacral, which is my inner authority, and it informs my sacral response moment by moment if something comes towards me, so that I can use that to help me make good decisions. People with defined spleens can be safely spontaneous when they follow their splenic awareness or their intuition. Defined, fixed, reliable, and consistent access to this moment by moment whisper, body whisper of what is good or not, safe or not for you. And as Lynette was saying, with the open spleen, maybe not as good to be spontaneous because you don't have consistent access to this splenic awareness. It doesn't mean you're not intuitive or that you don't have it or have access to it. It's just not as reliable. And so you fall back on whatever your inner authority is to make decisions and keep you safe and moving forward in the world.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What's up next?
What's next?
There
the
we are.
The sacral center. The red square at the bottom of the body graph. There, the sacral center is a motor, and it is pure, creative, life force energy. It works like a vortex. It spins and pulls life towards you. If you have a defined sacral center, you're automatically a generator aura type, because that is what gives you the open and enveloping aura that just pulls life towards you. It's vital energy. It's creative. It's about respondability. The sacral motor works in response to things. It's about having available energy to engage in and create and complete a task. And biologically, it's about sexuality and fertility, our reproductive organs. And people with a defined sacral center have defined, reliable, consistent access to this respondability, this when you are waiting to respond, when you are in a state of when you are available by waiting to respond to things, when things come towards you, this sacral motor, it just responds with energy moving towards something or doesn't respond, and you know what to move towards or not. And if you have an open sacral center, the question to ask is, do you know when enough is enough? 70% of the population on our planet has a defined sacral. So those with an open sacral are constantly taking in this creative life force energy and getting temporarily amped up with all of this, and may have a tendency to overdo things and exhaust themselves. Lynette, you have an open sacral center.
I most certainly do. Do I know when enough is enough? No. I'm getting better at it, but I don't. There's no on or off button for me. If I'm around somebody that has a defined sacral center, we're doing a physical job, they're going to know when to stop. They're going to know when to put their feet up and take a break. I'm going to be amplifying that energy, and I'm going to be working twice as hard, twice as long, and exhausting myself if I'm not aware. Another thing that's funny for me to notice is, for me, having an open sacral is people that have a defined sacral, it's like, it's so addictive. It's so, life force is yummy. And I've got a girlfriend, she's a generator, and if I spend more than 90 minutes with her, that's usually my cutoff, 2 hours max, 90 minutes. Because I know I'm going to be exhausted if I don't leave. But it's so hard for me to leave her. It's almost like I'm staring and I'm like a deer in the headlights. Because the sacral center is sexuality and life force and just the fascination with life force. I'm always fascinated with, subjects like that. So just understanding that, look, you've got an open sacral. Maybe you like to take naps. Maybe it's good for your body to take naps. I'm a manifestor. I am an energy type, but I don't have a defined sacral. So it's not quite the same thing. So it's just really helpful for me. That, that's my experience, is I'm learning when enough is enough. But yeah, it takes time to work with it. Yeah.
And with the open sacral, those of you with an open sacral, you're here to become very wise about how to use your energy and perhaps how others can use their energy as well. Learning to know when enough is enough so you stay physically well. And I've noticed we have a couple of questions in the Q&A, and I just wanted to say that we'll be answering questions at the end of the webinar as time permits. So we haven't forgotten you. We'll get to those at the end of the presentation. So the open sacral center, not knowing when enough is enough. And Lynette said this all very well. Do I know when enough is enough? Do I know when to stop if I need rest? And do I honor the inconsistency of my energy? There is nothing wrong with having an open sacral center and nothing wrong with needing to stop and take a rest. We are all different. We all operate differently. And we'll see when we get to the heart center how that's motor. It operates in a very different way. The sacral is consistent, reliable, life force, energy. And if you don't have that, you have other gifts and talents and other ways to express yourself. Take care of your energy and your well-being.
Well said. The solar plexus center. Okay. For those of you that have a defined solar plexus, which is that triangle on the right near the bottom there, this is your authority. And again, if you need the recording that we did on authority, please just let me know. Yeah, so emotional and nervous systems is what we have here. Passion, irrationality, potential emotional intelligence, spirit consciousness, feelings, and the biological correspondence, the kidneys and the pancreas. So, questions to ask yourself if this is open. Okay, I have an open solar plexus. Am I still avoiding confrontation and truth? For those of you that do not have an open solar plexus and it's consistent in you, just so you can kind of understand from my perspective, having it open, the way that it feels for me is, and just so you know a little bit about my background, none of my family is emotionally defined. Everybody is open here. None of my relationships, none of my kids, we're all open. When I get around somebody that has a defined solar plexus, they just feel scary to me. Really funny. Really funny to see that. And so I just, Ross says, the open emotional people, they have this smile, this like, oh, you don't bother me and I'm not going to mess with you, avoiding confrontation. When I first got my reading, I was like, yeah, that's true. I am too nice. I don't like to rock the boat. I like to avoid confrontation. And then I forgot about it. And I look at that now and I'm like, I was using the not self strategy of avoiding confrontation and truth to avoid the truth of my open solar plexus. I didn't even want to confront that. And when I sat down and I really observed my life, I was in my early 40s at that point. It was devastating. What I really saw for myself is that pretty much every decision I had made up to that point was something I wasn't 100% on board with. I was doing things because I was afraid people were going to get mad at me if I didn't do them, or they weren't going to love me. Or, I have an open spleen too, so I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to survive because they didn't love me, right? These things can work together. And once I really looked at how I was really giving my inner authority away to a not self amplification of a solar plexus energy, that was devastating. It was devastating. So do I still get nervous? Do I still get scared? Yes. Am I still uncomfortable about confrontation? Oh, yeah. But now I do it anyway. I stand up and I confront anyway, if it's necessary, in following my strategy and authority. Because if I don't, I'm not being myself and I'm going to feel it. I'm going to feel it. So open, again, here to be wise. It's a learning process, right? Avoiding confrontation and truth. Now, touchy, nervous, that's another really good way. You can feel just, like nervous and self-conscious. Secret life, that's a big one too. Not letting people know what you're doing and being secretive because you don't want to deal with any kind of emotional backlash. Am I afraid and hiding from the consequences of upsetting somebody? Not knowing how to feel or what to feel, or feeling the high of somebody else's solar plexus, or the the confliction, or the whatever they're going through. Understanding that if you have an open solar plexus, you're never here to make an emotional decision. If you have a defined solar plexus, we say for you guys, there's no truth in the now. Your now is not the same as our now. It sounds a little bit harsh, but patience is the thing for people with a defined solar plexus. Sleeping on it. Going through the full spectrum of the wave, the highest highs and the lowest lows. Because if you're not really feeling into, what I'm saying is feel your feelings. If you're not really feeling into all the nuances of the wave, what happens is you're cutting off your intelligence. And that doesn't mean that you're high on your wave, the answer is yes, or you're low on your wave, the answer is no. No, it means you get to a time and place when it settles and there's little or no nervousness, not 100%, you make a decision from there. So wisdom both ways, a really amazing center. It's definitely very mutative, going through a mutation right now. And yeah, what do you think, Ruth? I know you're open too.
Yes, I'm open too. And I have a lot of emotionally defined people in my life.
Okay.
So I love to watch the consistency of their emotionality and how being given permission to be emotional is huge, huge for people with a defined emotional center, honoring and respecting that, they have an emotional wave, and once it gets triggered, they have to ride it out. And stuffing your feelings or hiding your feelings or denying your feelings is very unhealthy. It doesn't allow you this deep, deep clarity of how to make a decision in your life, to be so very clear because you've sampled how you feel while you're riding your wave is a beautiful gift.
Yeah.
Whatever your, your definition is that goes along with your emotional authority, that emotional intelligence, I think of it like as a superpower, that you can get so clear and be so dedicated and convinced once you've gotten clear that, the decision, you never look back. And that's what I notice with my emotional friends.
Thank you. Yeah, we're both like, oh, the incredible depth of these people. It's beautiful. Yeah, and something I wanted to add too is it's like, oftentimes emotionally defined people, you guys may need to hear something many times before it starts to make sense to you. And that's not because you're not smart. It's because every time you hear something, you're at a different part of your wave as you're flying through time and space, because your wave's always moving. And then you get this full picture at a certain point, and then it makes sense. So don't ever rush yourself. Take your time. It's a beautiful center to have open and defined. It's a really interesting one.
For major decisions, always a good idea to at least sleep on it.
Heck yeah.
At least sleep on it. And we move to the heart. The heart, also known as the ego or willpower center. Willpower, egoism, the material world, determination. What an amazing thing. Although this center looks teeny tiny, it is mighty. In the biological correspondence to the heart, well, each gate has a different biological correlation. The thymus gland, gallbladder, the actual heart muscle, and the stomach. And you think about all of the people with stomach problems in the world associated with willpower or egoism or having to succeed on the material plane. Fixed, defined, reliable heart centers have a consistent access to this willpower based on their definition. They have, when it's correct for them, the determination and drive to move towards something. And we're going to let Lynette speak in just a moment because she is an ego, a heart center manifester. And I'm sure she can talk to us about how this operates for her. But if you have it open in your chart, are you still trying to prove yourself to yourself and others that you have willpower, courage, control, that you're smart enough, pretty enough, a good enough friend, a good enough daughter? I have an open heart center, and almost all the time my not self begins with the talk of trying to prove myself, and then it circles through my other openness. But a highly conditioned center, I think it's the most highly conditioned center that we have, and will lead me in the past towards making decisions totally against my nature to prove that I'm worthy, or prove or improve myself. And before we leave the defined heart center, I'd like, Lynette, would you please share with us your experience of this time?
Yeah. My heart center is big, fat, defined. It is my authority. And before I met human design, it's just something I had taken for granted. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And then people that don't do it, I'm like, what's wrong with you? You said you were going to, you know what I mean? So there's that, and you start to see the people that have it open. It's got a dark side too, because you've got this consistent willpower to follow through on all your bad decisions or your not self decisions. Okay, you got to be correct for it to operate, but it's consistent if it's defined. And for me, the way that it operates as my authority, you can hear it in my voice. It's it's so funny. I remember Ross saying that an ego manifester can be the ugliest thing on the planet, just simply because an ego manifester, if correct, is driven by pure will. And what will happen for me is I will just blurt out stuff. And it's not pretty. And it's not nice, and it's not socially, tribally acceptable a lot of the times, you know, and I see this, but if it's happening and I'm following my will as my authority, I have to trust it. So the heart center, it's a motor. Here's the thing to remember. It's a motor, but it's not a motor like the sacral center or, you know, the solar plexus or the root. It's a motor that loves to rest, and it's gripping. It holds on really tight, the willpower to do something. And then when it does something, it likes to relax. So if you've got a defined heart center, you really need a good balance between work and rest, and what you're delivering, what you've got the will to do, and then resting at the end. Yeah, it's I love it. It's great. And as long as I'm correct, I'm good. But if I'm not, guess who's going to have stomach problems? Guess who's going to have gallbladder issues if I'm not operating correctly? Yeah, I mean, I've seen this kind of stuff. So, yeah. Ruth, you have an open heart center. Do you want to?
I do.
I'd love to hear about that.
I have 6 open centers, so I have a
Yep.
symphony of stuff that goes on in my mind before I try to make a decision. But the open heart is about proving yourself. Are you trying to prove yourself? And I think one of the biggest shifts I've made in relaxing into my life is having the awareness about this conditioning going on. Am I always trying to prove myself? And that could be, am I a good daughter? Am I a good friend? Am I a good employee? Am I a good neighbor? Am I making this decision because I'm trying to be a good girl, or am I making this decision because it's correct for me? Huge conditioning factor in my life. People with an open ego as well may undervalue themselves. If you are self-employed or an entrepreneur with an open ego, you may undervalue your work. It's a constant thing for me to be aware of. Do I overcompensate by making promises? And then beat myself up when I can't keep the promises I made to prove that I was worthy? So my mantra has become, and I try to use it to give myself a break, because if you have an open heart center, you're not here. Part of your mission is not to prove anything to anyone in this life. So I will do my best, is what I say in most instances. I'm just going to do my best, so I don't put pressure on my heart to do things that I may not have the energy or opportunity to finish. And do I value myself? Self-love. Do I value myself? Great questions and great awareness to have when you use the conditioning of this center to make mental decisions for your life that aren't really in your highest and best interest. It's a very powerful conditioning force.
Yeah, there could be a lot of shame associated with that too, and just, it's okay. You don't need to prove yourself. We get to the G center, love, identity, and direction. Biological correspondence, the liver and your blood. Okay, it's the diamond in the middle. It's where the magnetic monopole sits, right here in the sternum, pulling us along in our trajectory. Now, if you have it open, the question here is, am I still looking for love and direction? Or, just maybe obsessed about my identity, looking to other people to fulfill those roles. The special counsel for people, and I know I'm jumping ahead to the openness, but the special counsel for people with open G centers is this: you need to feel good where you are. Place is everything. Place is so important in human design. The more you learn about this, you see place is just everything. And where you are is really what you are, what's in your field, what's happening around you, what's conditioning you. Something to understand: when you're in the right place, that becomes your direction too. And it's never mental. So I have a defined G center. Again, something I take for granted. It's just turned on. It's defined in me, and it's moving along, you know. And as long as I'm operating correctly, I don't really pay that much attention to it. Sometimes, you know, I will get a really expansive feeling. It is the way it's defined is to my throat. So what I'm sharing with you is I'm sharing myself. Basically, you can hear my G center and my ego, they're all connected together. So, but open, if you look at it when it's open, there is this deep pain here of, I'm looking for love. Who am I? If you have an open G center, you guys, it's not that you don't have an identity, okay? It's that you're here to experience your identity in a very fluid way. You're not here to grab onto something and hold on to it. I need that job title. I'm going to be, imagine asking a little kid with an open G center, what do you want to be when you grow up? Just the pressure, like thinking that you have to have that identity, right? Confused about your role, looking for purpose and direction, trying to figure out who you are. It's okay. Observe it. Be open with it. Go hang out in places where you feel good. Is there a place in your house, a nook you like to sit in, a tree you like to sit under? Do you find yourself going back to a cafe or a restaurant? Maybe the food's not good and the service isn't good, but you keep going back because it just feels good to you. Hang out in the places that feel good to you and navigate with your strategy and authority, and just observe the beauty of having an open G and the wisdom there, you know? Ruth, you have an open G center.
I do.
Yeah, what's your experience here?
If I'm in the right place, I'm with the right people. And that is definitely true. And before I met human design, I seriously thought there was something wrong with me. Because my comparison to others is so very difficult, and within families. My brother, who I later found out has a defined G center, always knew who he was going to be. He was always that person. And he did the same thing all of his life, and he's still doing it. And my mother, bless her heart, would say, Ruth, look at your brother. When are you going to decide what you're going to be when you grow up? Because I was a gypsy, and I would go from thing to thing, and one thing always built on another, but I didn't have one direction or one identity. And I find that by sampling a lot of different things over my lifetime, I have finally found my direction by sampling all those different things. And now I have become very wise about many, many different directions in life, and many identities. So it's all worked out well, but it was a source of great pain for a while when I wasn't compassionate with myself about being different than my brother.
Thank you.
And the throat. All roads lead to the throat in the body graph. The head, the ajna, to the throat, and then everything up in the body, up to the throat to be expressed. The throat center is about communication, manifestation, materialization, contact with the exterior world. And the biological correspondence is the thyroid and parathyroid glands. Now, I have an open throat, and Lynette has a defined throat. The question to ask yourself if this center is open is, are you trying to get attention from others? Are you dancing on the tabletops? Are you trying to be the star because perhaps you have something to say, but you don't have a defined, fixed, reliable way to do it? Are you dancing around trying to get attention so people will listen to what you have to say? With a defined throat, you have a fixed, defined, reliable way, depending upon your definition, and there are many different voices of the throat, to communicate, to manifest, to express yourself. And so, Lynette, let me toss it to you to talk a little bit about the defined throat before we go into the openness.
Thank you. Well, again, you know, my definition, I don't generally think about it. It's like brownies are always baking in the oven, and after a while, you don't smell them anymore. It's just always been a part of me. I don't feel necessary to talk. I will be a total hermit. if I'm in a group of people and not speak very much. And if I'm not being correct, maybe I should speak. But the thing to understand about the throat center, it's yes, it's about communication, and it's about, speaking, but it's also very metamorphic. Metamorphic. Whenever you've got, when the larynx dropped and we had the ability, instead of just grunting and making noises, to actually start articulating and speaking, man, things sped up pretty quick. Because instead of, like, I've told some story, this is all I can remember, something about, grunting about where there's water a mile away and how to find it. You could actually use words that other people understand and cut to the chase pretty quick. And not only that, when we use our throat, whenever you have something that's coming out that's acoustic, okay, it carries a potential of mutation. So this is metamorphic, so it needs to be correct like everything else. It really does. So, I mean, my experience with my throat, it's directly tied to my ego authority. If you're a manifestor, you've got a defined throat. And I have to rely on my will to speak, which means getting out of my head, dropping into my body, and just opening my mouth. Or it's also, just, what you're communicating with other people. Now, Ruth, on the other hand, is an open throat.
Yes.
Yeah. What do you think, Ruth?
I have six open centers, so I have a lot of opportunity for wisdom.
She's very wise, you guys. She really is.
Trying to attract attention, and the question you ask yourself when you have an open throat, before you are making decisions or before you speak, am I trying to attract attention? Am I initiating a conversation when it's not correct for me to try to get attention? Or if we add some of the other open centers, to prove I'm certain, or to prove I'm worthy, or to avoid getting into a confrontation with someone. Am I taking premature action? And am I trying to be the star? All of these things are potential shadows of this open throat. And the beauty of an open throat, when you give the authority back to your inner authority and not mental decisions, is with the open throat, you can become so wise, so experienced with so many different ways to communicate, so many different ways to manifest. Like the world is your oyster if you wait for right timing before you speak. That's really the answer for me for everything. If I wait to be invited to speak, then what I have to say will get the correct attention.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that wraps up the 9 centers in a very quick overview kind of way. So we're a little past the hour, but we do have time for a few questions, Lynette?
Sure, just a few, yeah.
Okay, so let me start here with I think it might be Yana or Jana. What is the difference between head and ajna? Because I don't see a big difference. It's all about thinking. And that's a great question. It's really hard to separate the head and ajna. Together they are the mind. So Lynette, you want to speak to that just a little bit?
Uh-oh. She asked me. No. Okay, so the head center is a pressure center. Pressure to think about things because it matters. The ajna center, so if the head center is about what you think, the ajna center is more like how you think, how you conceptualize. The ajna center is an awareness center. The head center is not aware. The ajna center is aware. Yes, together they make up the mind. Never the authority for anyone. Here to be used as an outer authority, right? When we share with each other. Does that help, Jana?
All right, and back up here to the chat bar. Let's see if we can take a few more.
Okay, I can't touch the chat because then I take the thing away from you. So
I've got it.
Okay.
Let's see. Lots of people can relate to the open root.
Okay.
Why flexibility in regard to the spleen? How so? This is from Lucy. That was interesting. I think you were talking about the open spleen and not being flexible. Can you expound on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, with my open spleen, the awareness centers carry fears, okay? Fears, good or bad, whatever. Sometimes we need to be afraid, but most of the time they're fears that, keep us from being correct. So for me, with an open spleen, it can just be, I can be way too rigid because I'm afraid. I just want to hold on to what I know will make me feel safe. And instead of using my own, strategy and authority to engage with something that's correct for me because I'm scared. It's the fear of engaging because you won't survive, or you're afraid you're going to take on too much responsibility. You're afraid the past is going to catch up with you. You're afraid about what's going to happen in the future, about being inadequate. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So it's a survival thing, and so you tend to be rigid and just hold on to what makes you feel safe.
Thank you, Lynette. And then Genesis says, is enough related to the spleen as well?
I mean, when I hear that, I think of the sacral center. When knowing when enough is enough, that question is directly correlated with the sacral center, energy-wise. So look, if you have an open sacral center, I look out at the world and I'm like, wow, 70% of the planet are generators. I can't do what these guys do. They just amaze me. And the thing is to remember too, it's almost, if you think of a battery, people with a divine sacral center have an ability to regenerate. If you've got an open sacral center, there ain't nothing that regenerates, guys. There's nothing that's regenerating. Okay, so there's also degenerating if you're not operating correctly as a sacral being. So knowing when enough is enough, for me, I don't know. What do you think, Ruth, about that question? I think it's more sacral, not spleen.
Well, I relate to it as a sacral, as something in the sacral as well. So I would say let's just keep it there. The splenic center is more about fears and survival and intuition or not.
Right.
And the sacral center is more about available energy or not.
Yeah, but if you're not being correct with your spleen, you don't know when enough is enough either. So I think I kind of get what you're pointing at.
Yeah. And again, we're talking about things in a vacuum, but really every last thing in your design is like a symphony of instruments all working together, all connected, all at the same time. It is difficult to pull one thing out, which is what we're doing today, and just talk about it when it's all interrelated, really. Yeah, a beautiful symphony.
Yeah, great point.
So Genesis has a statement I think is great. Yes, open heart does trigger the proving mechanism, which does not feel good after the proving is done. That's a good point. So Anna has a question about sleeping on, with a question about the emotional center defined. If I sleep overnight and want to make a decision the next day, how can I be sure that it is following my strategy, not from my mind? If I had time to think about it before answering. Wow, what a great question. So I think you're asking, Anna, how are you going to know that that it's not your mind if you sleep on it and make a decision? Wow. So I don't have a defined solar plexus, but my understanding and experience with others is that unlike trying to make a decision, you're thinking about something, emotional authority is in the body. So it's not about thinking that you're clear or weighing something, yes or no, yes or no. With emotional authority, it is about coming to a place of clarity in the body. It's kind of, you relax into the decision that there is this knowing and clarity and lack of nervousness Lynette talked about the touchy-feely, nervous kind of feeling with an open solar plexus. And when an emotional being is trying to make a decision, there may be that same kind of body feeling of a little bit of nervousness. And when clarity is reached, I understand the body relaxes and isn't nervous anymore. And there is clarity in the body, a feeling in the body, rather than something that has come out of your mind. Lynette, do you have anything to add?
Thank you. You did a great job. I'm thinking, Ruth and I are both open here, so this isn't obviously from personal experience. As you're observing in your process, try to be present, be in your body, okay? The mind measures. If you watch your mind and the thoughts that come in, depending on when we don't have your chart, so we can't see any of this, but the mind is very up and down, da, 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 and that's the mind. Now the body is the body, but if you've got an emotional wave, that can be different, but it's going to be a different kind of a feeling in the body than it is the mind. The other thing, it's like some people that I know, close friends of mine that have emotionally defined authorities, defined solar plexus, they don't really relate as much to the word clarity. If it works for you, take it. But the other thing is, like, you want to get to, like, if you're making a decision, let's say you're a generator and somebody wants you to move somewhere far away and you respond, yes, that's a response, but that's a big decision. You're not just going to move and pack up your house, right? You responded. You're going to go through your emotional wave. Now, you can't speed it up, you guys. You can't control the chemistry. It could take an hour. It could take a day. It could take over a year. As you're going through it, you're feeling into your body, and you're going to feel the level of nervousness, okay? The solar plexus operates in a level of nervousness. There's going to be a mid-level, low-level, high level of nervous in your body, all right? You want to wait to make the decision. Here's one clue, till you get to a place of either clarity or little or no nervousness in the body. Now, you guys, it's not going to be 100%. Okay, because the solar plexus is always moving. Aim for the higher end, 79% little or no nervous, 85%, 92%. Then when you just feel like it's just sort of settled and there's not a big charge one way or the other, then you pick up the phone and you call your friend and say, okay, great, let's move. What you're going to start to see as you go through this process is that much of life is self-evident and will take care of itself. You might be going through your emotional wave process, and then 3 weeks later, your friend calls you and says, never mind, that job opportunity place isn't going to happen. Think if you would have jumped into it and you would already have been moving. This is here to protect you. That's all I can think of right now.
That's an excellent point. Thank you, Lynette.
Okay.
Let's see, we can take maybe a couple more questions. In Dawn, can you share any insight about what it means to have a hanging gate in an undefined center and how that potential energy plays out? Yes, we can, but it is way beyond the scope of today's webinar.
Yeah.
And, it's a very interesting and amazing exercise to look at all of that. Unfortunately, it's way beyond the scope of what we can do today. Let's see. And then Genesis. I have to leave. Excellent webinar and the way you explain the information. Okay, asking for the recording. Genesis, we will get the recording out to you.
Yep.
Based on what it is described, the open centers amplify the energy. Yes, they do. I know it is said it does that, but I want the science behind this statement, if there is any. And I can start by saying, if you think of your defined centers, think of it as a circuit board, and that life force in those centers are turned on, constantly on, from the moment you're born until the minute you die. And that energy is transmitting out like a transmitter, a radio transmitter, transmitting your life force out into the universe. And the open centers are more like radio receivers. They pull in information And much like the radio receiver, it amplifies and distorts that energy that you take in just a little bit. And that's about as scientific as we have time for today, that I have expertise for. Lynette, do you have anything to add?
Nope, nope. We can get into neutrinos and talk about the magnetic monopole, but I'm not going there.
Yes, and the bass, the tone, the color, and the crystals. So yeah, it's kind of beyond the scope of today, but it's a great question. It really is.
It is a good one.
Can you talk a little about the relationship between defined and undefined centers? For example, I have a defined heart with an open sacral, which feels like consistent willpower without consistent source of energy to achieve it. How can these help inform each other? Wow, great question. Lynette?
We need to see the person's chart. I need to see what's your strategy and authority. What's your strategy? How does your aura work? Obviously, if you've got an open, we know you're not a generator. Are you a manifester or are you a projector? What's the strategy? Start there. Start with the aura type.
Yeah.
Then go to the authority. That's what I would say.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. It's so hard without seeing charts to
Yeah,
really
it is.
any comments. Okay. The first slide spoke about open, defined, and the third slide was what? I'm guessing we were talking about the definition slide. So we had a completely open center that had no gates. And then we have an undefined center, which is open but has a gate activated. And the third illustration with the two centers colored in that had the channel of life force, those are defined centers. And they each operate in a little different way. And today we generally talked about the open and undefined and the defined centers.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Rhoda asked, do you offer readings? Yes, both Lynette and I offer readings. And also on the IHDS site is a list of professionals that are certified from around the world. So some of that information will be available in the follow-up email. And you can always contact Lynette at office@ihdschool.com. All righty, so from Rebecca, I am a 4/6 generator and know I am living in the incorrect place and need to move, but will have to leave my job behind. Can I take the leap and have faith that things will fall into place with my income? I am just waiting for the right time to move. It is not time just yet. So we would have to see your chart, but I doubt if we could give you the answer if it is time for you to make that leap. I believe that you're the only person that will know that using your strategy and authority. Lynette, would you like to add? And I know that sounds like a cop-out, but it's really true.
Well, it is.
Time, we believe you are your own authority and you have the answers inside.
You know, sweetie, there's just no easy answer here. And I've lived through this myself on more than one occasion with the fear of survival and the income and all of that. And in the beginning, it was really very, I mean, it's a lot easier now, but in the beginning, it was not easy for me to trust my ego authority that was telling me to do these things that my mind was certain was a really bad idea, but I trusted it. I just trusted it. And I followed it. And I had to go. And yeah, I mean, there were times when I was, you know, really had very little income, but I was still survived. So do your best to experiment with it. You know, if you haven't gotten a reading, find somebody that you resonate to, maybe get a foundation reading and be easy with yourself, you know, experiment with it, see what it feels like, because learning to trust life is not easy. It's not easy to do that until it actually happens and you attain it. Okay, so be easy, see what happens when you respond, and just keep going forward in your own experiment. Yeah, that's all I can offer right now. And the other thing, I can say one more thing. And I
Okay.
love this. Ross said, as nine-centered beings, we're not here to be concerned about survival. So maybe that's a little thing that your mind can chew on for a little bit. There you go. But look, I know that I can say that because I get it. So I just want you to know that I totally get it. But because I have followed my authority, and I won't get into it, but the stories I could tell you, the things that have happened in my life that my mind never would have conceived of in a million years. So it does work, but you've got to experiment with it in your own vehicle. Yeah.
Okay, and we have one last question. This is
Okay,
all we really have time for. Rita asks, is someone with 6 open centers, which would also be me, attracted with others who have many defined centers?
depends.
Yeah, it really depends. From I think our genetic imperative is more about the harmonic gates, what we are attracted to, gates that are opposing. That's a little out of the scope of the information being presented here today. Wouldn't you agree, Lynette?
Yeah, it is. It is. Good question, though.
But it's a great question. You know, this slide that's up right now, next steps. What a great group you guys have been. Great questions, super good insight. I know this is just skips the surface of talking about centers in human design, and there's so much more. So if you would like to start your experiment, we invite you to join the mailing list. Come to our next webinar on profiles. If you don't have a chart, get a free human design chart. You can also purchase a personal report on the IHD School website. A foundation reading worth its weight in gold. And again, you know, both Lynette and I do readings, and there is a huge resource of people on IHDschool.com website. It is so important to find someone that you resonate with. So, you know, feel free to look around, check people's websites if they have them. That list on the site is of certified professionals. A Living Your Design workshop is a transformational experience. There are so many resources and tools for you if you're interested. And if it seems confusing, please send a note to Lynette. She will be happy to give you all kinds of options of where you can go next. And we will be sending a follow-up email with links and copies to of this recording. Someone had asked if it will be on YouTube, and no, it's not. Lynette, the recordings come in a zipped file, is that correct?
I believe they are with the email. I think that's how we'll do it. But it'll be within the next couple days. I'll make sure that it goes out.
Yes, and it's not on YouTube, but it's an actual file you can download and watch on your own.
Yeah.
Or laptop. Yeah. Lynette, it is always such a joy to be with you.
Yeah, it was super fun. Thank you, Ruth.
Yeah,
Thanks everybody for being here live. And if you need anything, office@ihdschool.com, like Ruth said, is my email. I'm happy to help however I can. And just remember to love yourself. That's the tagline here. And it's a good one. So
yes. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.